Hello, and welcome to Boring History for Sleep. I am so glad you are here. Tonight, we are not just going to talk about history. We are not going to memorize dates or battles or the lineage of kings. We are going to do something much slower. We are going to try and feel it. But first, before we begin our journey, let yourself settle. This is a moment just for you. Allow your breathing to slow down, to find its own natural, easy rhythm. Feel the physical reality of your comfort. Feel the weight of the blankets upon you, a gentle, reassuring pressure. Feel the softness of your pillow as it cradles your head. Feel the quiet, reliable, and almost magical warmth of the room you are in. Think for a moment about that warmth. It is a state of being we take for granted. It is a baseline, an assumption. It is the simple, profound safety of knowing that the cold cannot touch you. It is a psychological comfort, a shield against the ancient, primal fear of the dark and the cold. Hold on to that feeling of warmth, that feeling of safety. Because tonight, we are going to journey to a time and a place where warmth was not an assumption. It was not a guarantee. It was a treasure. It was a victory won through relentless, year-long effort and guarded with anxious vigilance. We are traveling back to the 14th century. Specifically to a small village in the north of England in the year 1350. We are going to a time when the world was growing colder, a period modern historians would later call the Little Ice Age. This wasn't just a matter of a few bad winters, it was a global climatic shift. A slow, creeping, and unpredictable cooling that changed the very rhythm of life, shortening growing seasons and making the battle for survival a desperate annual siege. Imagine, if you will, a bone-chilling cold that seeps into your marrow. There is no modern insulation, no central heating. There is only a small, smoky fire and a wall made of mud and straw. Death in this world is not an abstract concept. It lurks around every corner in the guise of hunger, sickness, and the cold itself. The winter months in medieval Europe weren't just uncomfortable. They were a savage battle for survival that claimed countless lives each year. Our guide on this journey is not a king or a knight or a great scholar. He is a man named Thomas Fletcher. He is a farmer, a husband, and a father. And as we begin, he is just waking up. So, let your mind drift. Let the sounds of your world fade away. Let go of the day, and let us imagine his. You are not in your bed anymore. It is the year 1350. You are in a small village in northern England. The process of waking is not a sudden one. It is a slow, reluctant emergence from a shallow, huddled sleep. The first thing that registers to your returning consciousness is not a sound or a sight, but a feeling. It is the feeling of cold, sharp air on the small patch of your face left exposed to the room. The first thing you notice is the cold. It is not the crisp, dry cold of a modern winter made sterile by a furnace. It is a biting, damp chill that seems to emanate from the packed earth floor beneath you, a cold that feels heavy and wet, a cold that has a smell. It is in the air you breathe, and it feels as if it has settled deep into your bones, making your joints protest before you've even moved. There is no central heating. There is no modern insulation. The very concept of a temperature-controlled environment is a fantasy beyond imagining. Your eyes flutter open, and they sting. They sting because the air in this small single room is thick with smoke. Above you, in the deep shadows of the pre-dawn, you can just make out the shape of the roof beams, timber beams that are rough-hewn, not smooth, and blackened to a deep sooty charcoal by years of smoke from the open hearth in the center of the room. You take your first conscious breath. It is a shallow one, and the air is a complex mixture of scents. You can smell the sharp, acrid tang of a wood fire that is burned down to its embers. You can smell the musty, slightly sweet, slightly rotten scent of the damp straw that makes up your mattress. And, unmistakably, you can smell the warm, earthy, animal scent of the cattle. They are penned in an adjacent section of this very same room, their large, warm bodies a vital part of the home's heating system. You are lying not on a soft, pliant mattress, but on a pallet of straw, packed down by the weight of your family. It's set on a simple wooden frame. It rustles and crunches beneath you as you shift your weight, a dry, papery sound in the quiet. You are piled with scratchy woolen blankets and perhaps a fur or two, a sheepskin, a deer hide, whatever your family has managed to acquire. But the cold has crept in during the long, dark night. The blankets feel heavy, but not warm. Your breath, when you exhale, forms small, fleeting clouds in the dim air, visible for just a second before vanishing. You are not alone. You roll over, and the straw crunches again. Your siblings, or perhaps, as Thomas Fletcher, your children and a grandparent, are huddled close. Their small bodies are pressed against yours. This is not just for affection. It is for survival. It is the simple, primal sharing of body heat, a small collective fortress of warmth against the vast invading cold. Outside, the wind whistles. It is a thin, high-pitched sound, a relentless, mournful cry as it pushes against the walls and through the bare trees. You can see the first weak, gray light of a November morning. It is not coming through clear glass. It is filtering through small, unglazed window openings, square holes in the wall. They are covered by a thin, oiled piece of parchment, which glows a dull, sickly yellow, or perhaps just wooden shutters latched tight against the wind. Frost has painted delicate, intricate patterns on the inside of the wood itself, a testament to the cold that has breached your walls. This is your world. This is the reality of a medieval winter. It is not an inconvenience. It is a presence, a physical, heavy, and dangerous thing that has settled over the land. For the family of Thomas Fletcher, this particular November morning carries an extra weight. The frantic preparations are over. The real test is about to begin. This is not just any day. This is the 11th of November. It is the Feast of St. Martin. In the modern world, this date might pass without notice, a day like any other. But in the medieval calendar, it is a crucial, unmoving deadline. It is known as Martinmas, and it traditionally marks the true, formal beginning of winter. This is not a day of celebration, not in the way we might think. It is a day of grim, necessary, and communal work. The last few weeks have been spent in a state of frantic preparation, a race against the calendar and the frost. Every man, woman, and child in the village has been moving with a quiet, anxious urgency because they all understand the stakes. What you have stored by St. Martin's Day is what you will have to survive on until spring. And spring is a distant, abstract hope, a place separated from you by 4 long, dark, cold months. Failure in those preparations is not an option. It means you might not see that spring. St. Martin's Day is, above all, the traditional time for the great animal slaughter. The logic is simple, and it is brutal. There simply is not enough fodder, not enough hay, not enough stored grain to keep all the livestock alive through the cold months. The fields are bare, the grass is dead. Only the essential animals are spared. The breeding stock for next year, the strong working animals like oxen that will be needed to pull the plow come springtime. Every other animal, the pigs fattened on autumn acorns, the older cows, the excess sheep, must be culled. To try and keep them alive would be to waste precious hoarded food, and that would risk the survival of the human family. So, as Thomas Fletcher sits up on the edge of his straw bed, wincing as his feet touch the cold, packed earth floor, the sounds of the village coming to life are different than they were in summer. There is the sharp, rhythmic sound of knives being honed on whetstones. The air, already cold, will soon be thick with the metallic tang of blood and the pervasive, stinging scent of wood smoke from processing fires. This is a day of communal labor. No single family does this alone. Families help each other, sharing tools, space, and expertise. Thomas will join the other men. His son, William, at 14, is already considered a man and will work alongside him. Their hands will be raw and stiff from the cold work, their clothes blood-spattered by midday. But in this world, waste is the greatest sin. Nothing, absolutely nothing, will be lost. The warm blood is collected in wooden buckets to be mixed with oats or barley and boiled into black puddings. The intestines are carefully removed to be scraped, cleaned, and salted, becoming the casings for sausages. The fat is precious. It will be rendered down, boiled until it clarifies into a clean white substance used for cooking, for waterproofing leather, and for making the simple rushlights that will be their only defense against the long nights. The bones will be saved, to be simmered for hours, adding flavor and meager nutrition to the thin soups of late winter. For Thomas's wife, Emma, and his daughters, Margaret and Agnes, the work is just as vital. The fresh meat, the parts that cannot be preserved, the liver, the heart, must be eaten immediately in a rare and welcome feast. But the rest, the vast majority, must be processed for the long months ahead. This is the moment the winter larder is truly filled. It is the final, desperate deposit into the bank of survival before the long, slow, and anxious withdrawal begins. Thomas Fletcher is 43 years old. By the standards of his time, he is considered an old man, past his prime. And as he stands outside his small home, his joints protesting the damp cold, he peers at the heavy frost on the ground and thinks what many older people think. The winters aren't like they used to be. He nods grimly to his son, William, who is stoking the fire. Peter the miller says we're in for a hard winter. Thomas is right. The winters are getting worse. Ever since he was a boy, they have seemed longer, colder, and more dangerously unpredictable. What Thomas Fletcher cannot know is that he is living through a profound global climatic shift. He is living in what modern historians have named the Little Ice Age. This period of cooling, which gripped Europe and the Northern Hemisphere from roughly the 14th to the 19th century, was not a Hollywood-style disaster with sudden, towering glaciers. It was a slow, creeping, and insidious change that tested the limits of human endurance. A global cooling of just about 2 degrees Celsius, as the source text mentions, might not sound like much to our modern temperature-controlled ears. But for a farmer like Thomas, whose entire existence depended on the sun, the rain, and the soil, it was the difference between life and death. It meant that the growing season was shorter. The frost came earlier in the autumn and lingered later in the spring. The rains were more unpredictable, often coming in torrential floods that rotted the seed in the ground. Harvests that were once reliable became a desperate gamble. It meant that glaciers in the high mountains of the Alps were advancing, crushing villages that had existed for centuries. It meant that rivers like the Thames in London, which rarely froze, were now freezing solid for weeks or even months at a time. This anxiety about the harvest, about having enough, is a living, breathing memory for Thomas and his wife Emma. They were just children in 1315 when the rains began in the spring and simply did not stop, all through the summer and into the autumn, ruining crops across all of Europe. What followed was the Great Famine, a period of starvation so vast and terrible that villages were decimated. Some said a quarter of the population died before relief finally came. Thomas and Emma survived that. They carry the memory of it, the stories of it, in their bones. This is not ancient history to them. It is a shadow that looms over their own lives. This deep ancestral fear informs their worldview. It is why the failure of a harvest is not an economic setback. It is an existential threat. It is why the sounds of their neighbors' slaughtering is, in its own grim way, a comfort. It means the community has food. So, when Thomas looks at his stores, his anxiety is not just about the coming cold. It is a deep-seated terror born of hard experience. He knows that a successful harvest is a blessing, a fragile truce with a hostile world. He knows that a full larder is the only thing that stands between his family and a slow, cold death. This knowledge is the engine that drives every action, every preparation, every single day. The Little Ice Age is not just a backdrop. It is the silent, cold, and ever-present antagonist of his entire life. Let us look more closely at the house that Thomas and his family call home. To our eyes, it would seem impossibly small and primitive. It is a single-room dwelling, perhaps 20 feet long and 15 feet wide. The floor is not wood, but packed earth, cold and hard beneath his feet. But do not mistake simple for ineffective. This house is a remarkable organic machine, designed and refined over generations for one primary purpose: to conserve heat. Let us imagine building it. First, you would raise a sturdy timber frame from oak or elm, trees felled from the Lord's wood with his permission and a tithe, of course. These posts and beams form the skeleton. Then you would create the walls. Between the timbers, you would weave a lattice of thin, flexible sticks like a rigid, oversized basket. This is the wattle. You would use whatever is pliable and local: hazel, willow, or young ash saplings cut and woven tightly together. Then comes the daub. This is the insulating plaster, and it is a recipe born of the earth itself. You would mix clay, dug from a local pit, with water to make a thick, sticky mud. Into this, you would mix a binder. Straw is perfect, as it traps thousands of tiny air pockets, providing insulation. And you would add animal dung, most likely from the cow. This is not just for filler. The acids and fibers in the dung help to bind the clay and straw together, making it more durable and weather-resistant. You would smear this mixture, this thick, heavy, fragrant plaster, onto the wattle, packing it in with your hands, pushing it into every crack and crevice, building it up until the wall is several inches thick. It dries as hard as a brick, but with far superior insulating properties. The roof is thatched, made of thick, bundled reeds or straw, layered densely to shed water and snow. The roof is pitched steeply, not for style, but for function, to help the heavy snows of the Little Ice Age slide off before their weight can collapse the structure. The house is built with winter in mind. It is likely oriented with its smallest end facing the prevailing winter wind, minimizing the surface exposed to the elements. The door is on the leeward side, protected from the worst of the gales. Inside, there is no chimney. A chimney is a luxury, but it is also a hole, a vacuum that sucks precious warm air out of a house. Instead, the Fletchers have a central hearth, a fire pit in the middle of the room. The smoke simply rises, filters through the rafters, and finds its way out through gaps in the thatch or a small louvered hole in the roof. This makes the air constantly smoky, stinging the eyes and blackening the beams overhead. But it also means that every single calorie of heat generated by the fire stays within the four walls for as long as possible. The smoke has another benefit. As it drifts lazily through the rafters, it slowly cures the meats that are hung there, preserving them. This small, dark, smoky, crowded hut is not a failure of architecture. It is a masterpiece of thermal efficiency, a house cave built from the earth itself. It is the shell that will keep the Fletcher family alive. Inside this wattle and daub shell, there is a heart. It is the central fire, and that fire must never, ever go out. A successful fire is the first victory of each day. Firewood is not just a comfort. It is not just for cooking. It is life itself. Thomas Fletcher's survival and his family's depends entirely on their woodpile. Each family needs several cords of wood, a stack 8 feet long, 4 feet wide, and 4 feet high, to survive the entire cold season. And gathering it is a year-round, back-breaking task. Let us follow Thomas and William on a hypothetical wood-gathering trip in late autumn. They would not take an axe to a living tree. That is a crime. The forests are the Lord's property, and cutting a living tree is poaching, an offense that could bring severe punishment, a crippling fine, a public whipping, or even mutilation for a repeat offender. Instead, they are allowed to take wood by the right of estovers. This means they can take only what is already on the ground, dead wood, fallen branches, or what they can pull down from a tree with a shepherd's crook. So they walk for miles, pulling a small cart or sled, their eyes scanning the forest floor. The work is cold and the ground is muddy. They are competing with every other family in the village for the same scarce resource. The best, driest wood, oak, ash, is taken first. As winter approaches, the pickings get slim. They are left with damp, half-rotten wood or green wood from branches ripped down in a recent storm. This wood must then be hauled back, stacked meticulously near the house, and covered as best as possible to keep it dry. A dry wood pile is a symbol of wealth and security, more so than any coin. Thomas has seen winters where desperate families, having failed to gather enough, faced a grim choice: freeze to death in their own homes or break the law. He has seen people burn parts of their own homes, their fences, their tools, their furniture, just to stay alive for one more night. So, the woodpile, stacked nearly to the ceiling on one side of the room, is Thomas's greatest accomplishment. It represents months of foresight and labor. And the fire itself is a precious living thing. Every morning, the first and most crucial task is to revive it. Thomas's son, William, is already kneeling at the hearth, stoking the remnants of last night's fire. Every night, the last thing Thomas does before sleep is to bank the fire. This is a careful, meditative ritual. He doesn't extinguish it. He covers the glowing embers with a precise, thick layer of ash. This doesn't put the fire out, it starves it of oxygen, causing it to smolder slowly, to sleep. The goal is to keep those embers alive until morning. Starting a new fire from scratch in the cold, dark, damp morning with a difficult flint and steel, striking a spark onto dry tinder is a cold and time-consuming task. Maintaining the fire, keeping the heart of the house beating, is much, much easier. That small red glow hidden under the gray ash is the seed of tomorrow's survival. Let us return to St. Martin's Day and the grim, methodical work of the slaughter. The meat that Thomas brings home is not a simple matter of putting it in the freezer. The freezer does not exist. The challenge is to make this fresh meat, this vital protein and fat, last for 4, 5, or even 6 months through the hungry cold. This is an art form, a science learned through bitter necessity. The first and most valuable tool is salt. Salt, to us, is cheap and common, found in every kitchen. To the Fletcher family, it is a precious, expensive commodity. It is not fine, white, and free-flowing. It is coarse, gray, and damp, harvested from coastal salt pans or boiled down from inland brine springs. Earlier in the year, Emma had traded a whole wool cloak that she had woven herself for a single precious small sack of salt, saving it specifically for this day. Now, that salt is put to work. This is not a light sprinkle for flavor. This is an industrial process in a small hut. Emma and Margaret take large cuts of pork and beef and rub them thoroughly with the coarse salt, pushing it into every crevice, scoring the fat and packing it in. Then they are packed into a wooden barrel with thick layers of salt in between each piece of meat. The science is simple and it is elegant: osmosis. The salt, a powerful desiccant, draws the moisture out of the meat, creating an environment so dry and saline that the bacteria of decay simply cannot grow. After weeks or months in the salt, the meat will be hard, dry, and intensely salty. It will be almost inedible as is. Before it can be cooked in February, it will have to be soaked in fresh water for hours or even days to draw some of the salt back out. But it will be safe. It will be food. The second method is smoke. As we saw, the smoky air in the cottage is a constant. Emma and her daughters will cut other pieces of meat, perhaps the hams of the pig or smaller strips of beef. They might rub them with dried herbs from their small garden, rosemary, thyme, and sage, which also have preservative qualities. Then they are hung high in the rafters, far above the flames, but deep in the cloud of smoke. Here, in the cool, dry air near the roof, the constant rising smoke from the central hearth will work its magic. The fire is likely fed with hardwoods like oak or hickory, which produce a smoke rich in flavorful preservative compounds. Day after day, week after week, these compounds permeate the meat, acting as a powerful antiseptic while also slowly, gently drying it out. This is how hams and sausages are made, cured by the very air the family breathes. And nothing is wasted. The blood, mixed with oats or barley, becomes blood pudding. The intestines are cleaned to be used as sausage casings. The fat is rendered, boiled down into a clean, white substance used for cooking, for waterproofing leather, and for soaking the pith of reeds to create rushlights, the only form of lighting they have, which gives off a dim, smoky, flickering glow. This is not just cooking, it is alchemy, turning the perishable into the permanent. Meat, even preserved, is a luxury. It is for flavor, for fat, and for special occasions. The true backbone of the medieval winter diet, the daily fuel that will keep the family going, is what comes from the earth. The family's survival depends on the storage pit. This is another piece of ingenious, low-tech engineering. It is a small cellar, or, more simply, a hole dug deep into the ground, either inside the house, where the ambient warmth of the hut keeps it from freezing, or just outside, heavily insulated. Let us imagine them digging it in the autumn, lining the cold, dark hole with a thick, dry layer of straw for insulation. Here, the Earth's own constant, stable temperature, which stays just above freezing, creates a perfect natural refrigerator. After the autumn harvest, this pit was filled. Emma and her daughters would have carefully layered their root vegetables, not touching each other, separated by more straw: turnips, parsnips, carrots, and beets. These are not the small, sweet vegetables we are used to. They are large, tough, and fibrous, bred for their ability to store, not for their delicate flavor. Cabbages, with their outer leaves left on for protection, are also stored here, as are onions and garlic. This pit is a treasure chest of calories and nutrition, a hidden, underground defense against starvation. The other great treasure is the grain. This is the most precious winter food. The barley, the rye, and the small, precious sack of wheat have been threshed and are stored in a sturdy wooden chest or in vermin-proof barrels. The chest is raised off the ground on legs, a simple but vital defense against the mice and rats that are a constant gnawing threat. Every handful of this grain is rationed. It is the core ingredient for the pottage, for the bread, and for the ale. Hanging from the rafters, alongside the smoking hams, are other bundles, each a small victory of foresight. There are strings of dried peas and beans. There are bunches of dried herbs, rosemary, thyme, sage, that will both flavor the monotonous food and be used as medicine. In the coolest corner of the house, the best apples from the harvest, perhaps a tough, sour variety that stores well, are carefully wrapped in straw and stored, each one a small, sweet reminder of the sun. And finally, there is the cheese. Fresh milk cannot be preserved. So, throughout the summer and fall, when their single cow was producing the most milk, Emma would have spent hours on the complex, alchemical process of cheesemaking. She would have heated the milk, added rennet from a calf's stomach to curdle it, cut the curds, drained the whey, salted the curds, and pressed them into heavy, dense wheels. These aged yellow wheels, now hard as wood, are a concentration of fat and protein, a durable, calorie-dense food that will be carefully cut from, sliver by sliver, in the leanest months. This is their larder. This is their bank account, and they must live on it, with no further deposits until spring. How do you stay warm when the air itself is trying to freeze you? You wrap yourself in the single greatest textile innovation of the pre-modern world, wool. Medieval winter clothing is all about layers, and almost all of those layers are wool. Cotton, which we love today, is a terrible winter fabric. When it gets wet, it loses all its insulating properties and clings to the skin, leaching away body heat. Linen, made from flax, is used, but only as the base layer. A simple linen chemise or undertunic is worn against the skin. It's not particularly warm, but it can be washed much more easily than wool, and it wicks sweat away from the body. But wool is a miracle. Let us imagine the journey of this wool. In the late spring, the family's few sheep would be sheared. The raw fleece is greasy, full of dirt, twigs, and lanolin, the natural oil of the wool. Emma and her daughters would scour it, washing it in buckets of hot water and urine, which acts as a powerful ammonia-rich detergent. Once rinsed and dried, the wool is carded, combed between two wooden paddles studded with metal teeth to align all the fibers. Then, for hours, days, weeks, the women spin. They use a simple drop spindle, a weighted stick. They feed the carded wool, and with a rhythmic, practiced motion, they twist the spindle, letting it drop and spin, drawing the fibers out into a strong, consistent yarn. Their fingers are coated in the natural lanolin, which softens their skin. This yarn is then woven on a simple vertical loom in the cottage, thump, thump, thumping as the shuttle is passed back and forth, creating the dense, scratchy, and incredibly warm cloth that will become their clothes. So, let's imagine Thomas getting dressed on this cold November morning. Against his skin, a simple, long linen undertunic. Over that, a woolen tunic reaching to his knees. And over that, a second, heavier woolen overtunic. His legs are covered with loose-fitting trousers or hose, but for extra warmth, as his wife Emma instructs his son, he winds long strips of woolen cloth, leg wrappings around his calves from ankle to knee. Emma's clothing is similar, a long linen undergarment and then 1 or 2 or even 3 long woolen gowns layered one on top of the other. On their heads, both sexes wear caps or hoods pulled up tight. They instinctively know what we have to be reminded of, that a huge amount of body heat escapes through the head. On their hands, they wear mittens, not gloves. The simple design, which keeps the fingers together, is far more effective at sharing and retaining warmth than the individual isolation of a glove. The greatest challenge is footwear. Their shoes are simple leather turn shoes, offering almost no insulation. The solution is to wear thick, hand-knitted woolen socks, or even stuff their shoes with straw or felt insoles just to create a barrier against the frozen ground. When they must go out into the deep snow, or worse, the thick, freezing mud of a thaw, they might strap on pattens. These are simple overshoes, wooden platforms that elevate their feet by an inch or two, keeping them just above the wet, cold ground. This is their personal armor against the cold. It is heavy, it is scratchy, and it probably smells strongly of damp wool, wood smoke, and sweat. But it works. Winter is a time of confinement. The world shrinks. The days are brutally short. By mid-afternoon, as early as 3:30, the light is already fading. Darkness falls like a heavy blanket, and the long, cold, dangerous night begins. This limited light, combined with the need to conserve energy, changes the very rhythm of life. Most families, like the Fletchers, do not eat 3 meals a day. They eat 2. There is no breakfast as we know it. The first task of the day is to revive the fire, tend to the animals, and bring in water or melt snow. The first meal, a lighter one, comes in the late morning, perhaps around 10 o'clock, after the first essential chores are done. This might be a piece of dark, dense bread made from rye or barley and a cup of weak, small ale. Even the children drink this ale, as it's often safer than the water and provides a source of calories. The main meal is eaten in the early afternoon, perhaps at 3 o'clock, while there is still some daylight to see by. And the centerpiece of this meal, and indeed of their entire winter diet, is the pottage. Let us spend a moment with this pottage. A large iron pot hangs over the fire constantly, suspended from a hook or tripod. It simmers day and night. This is the pottage. It is a thick, hearty soup or stew, or perhaps more accurately, a porridge. The base is grain, oats or barley. Into this pot goes everything: dried peas and beans, onions, turnips and parsnips from the storage pit, chopped into chunks. A few scraps of salted pork, soaked and rinsed, are added for flavor and, critically, for fat. Dried herbs from the rafters, thyme, sage, are crumbled in. It is the medieval equivalent of a slow cooker. It is never emptied, just constantly added to. Today's leftovers become the base for tomorrow's meal. In the quiet of the small hut, the bloop, bloop, bloop of the simmering pottage is a constant, reassuring sound. It is warm, it is filling, and it stretches their precious ingredients as far as they can possibly go. With the harvest over, outdoor work has mostly ceased. This means the winter days are defined by indoor tasks, performed in the dim, smoky light near the hearth. For Emma and her daughters, this is the season of textiles. The wool that was sheared in summer must now be processed. Hour after hour, they sit with a spindle and distaff, their fingers rhythmically drawing out the fibers and spinning them into yarn. The rhythmic thump, thump, thump of the loom is the heartbeat of the house, as Emma and Margaret weave that yarn into the cloth that will become their clothes or a cloak to be traded for salt. For Thomas and William, it is a time for mending and making. They sit by the fire, their hands busy, repairing the wooden harrow that will be needed for spring planting. They carve new handles for tools, their knives scraping softly on the wood. They repair the leather harness for the ox. They whittle simple wooden bowls or spoons. This is the sound of a medieval winter. Not silence, but the low, repetitive, productive sounds of survival. The whir of the spindle, the thump of the loom, the scrape of a knife on wood, and the constant, simmering crackle of the sacred fire. As the family huddles around the fire, they are not the only living creatures in the house. The human and animal worlds are not so clearly divided. The Fletchers, like many peasant families, practice co-housing. Their single-room cottage is, in reality, a longhouse by design. The source text tells us that the cattle are penned in an adjacent section of the home, what was often called a byre. This is often just a section of the same room, perhaps separated by a low wooden barrier or a screen, where the family's most valuable animals are kept. The family has one milk cow. She is their lifeline. In summer, she provides milk that can be made into cheese or butter. In winter, her milk is scarce, but she is a precious asset that must be protected. They also have a few chickens, which are kept in a small coop in the corner, adding their modest warmth and, if the family is lucky, a rare egg. During the most brutal cold spells, as the source suggests, this cow might even be brought into the main living space with the family. This practice is not born of a sentimental affection for livestock. It is born of a desperate, practical need. Animals, particularly a large animal like a cow, are walking furnaces. They generate a tremendous amount of body heat. A single cow, in a small, enclosed wattle and daub space, can raise the ambient temperature by several precious degrees. The trade-off, of course, is what our modern senses would rebel against. The small, smoky room is also filled with the animal's presence. There is the sweet, grassy smell of her cud and her breath. There is the earthy, sharp smell of her dung and urine, which must be shoveled out daily and mixed with the straw bedding. There are the sounds, her low, gentle moo, the rhythmic, meditative sound of her chewing her cud, the shuffling of her hooves on the straw. This is a symbiotic relationship. The family's house and their fire protects the cow from the killing cold, and the cow, in return, becomes a living, breathing furnace, a four-legged radiator that helps keep the children, huddled on their straw mattresses, from freezing in the night. Their warmth is a resource, plain and simple. The ever-present threat in this shared space, however, is vermin. The stored grain, the food scraps, and the animal feed make the hut a paradise for mice and rats. This is a constant battle. A good cat is as valuable as a farm tool. The grain chest is raised on legs for a reason. Every crumb is swept up. The blurred lines between human and animal life mean a constant, vigilant war against the smallest, hungriest of creatures. Now, let us leave the smoky, crowded, animal warmth of the Fletcher's hut. Let us pull our woolen cloaks tight and walk through the snow-covered village to the other center of power, the manor house. Here, the local lord, or his reeve, his administrator, lives. And here, winter is a different experience. The manor house is not built of wattle and daub. It is built of stone. It is a symbol of permanence, wealth, and power. It is designed to impress, to withstand attack, and to last for centuries. It is also, ironically, much, much colder. Stone is a terrible insulator. It is a heat sink. It absorbs and conducts warmth away from any source and radiates a deep, penetrating cold. The Fletcher's hut, with its thick, organic walls of mud and straw, is far more thermally efficient. But the lord of the manor has luxuries to combat the cold that Thomas Fletcher cannot even imagine. First, he has multiple, enormous fireplaces. These are a status symbol, but they are also horribly inefficient. They are set into the stone walls, and most of their heat roars up the chimney, sucking vast quantities of warm air from the room with it. They are fed not by carefully gathered dead wood, but by whole logs, cut from the Lord's forest by his servants and hauled by a team of oxen. The life of a servant in the manor house is a constant, exhausting battle to feed these hungry fires. Second, he has glass. The windows of the manor house are glazed, filled with small, diamond-shaped panes of glass held in lead cames. This is a breathtaking, almost unbelievable luxury. It means the Lord can have bright, clear light and keep the wind out at the same time, a choice the Fletchers, with their oiled parchment or wooden shutters, do not have. Third, the cold stone walls are not left bare. They are covered with heavy woolen tapestries. We think of these as art, and they are, depicting vibrant hunting scenes, coats of arms, or biblical stories. But their primary purpose is insulation. They are a barrier, an extra layer of wool for the house itself, trying to stop the cold stone from leaching the warmth from the room. Fourth, the floors are covered not with straw, but with woven rushes, which are changed periodically. And in the Lord's private chambers, he might even have a rare and costly carpet from the east laid over a table, not the floor, as a symbol of his wealth. Comfort in the manor house is not achieved through efficient design. It is achieved through the massive, conspicuous, and constant consumption of resources, of firewood, and of the labor of the servants, whose entire winter is a cold, drafty, exhausting battle to keep the fires roaring for their masters. Let us zoom out even further to the great stone castle of a high nobleman, a duke or an earl. Here, the scale of winter is magnified in every respect. Life in a vast stone castle in January can be utterly miserable. The great hall, with its cavernous, vaulted ceilings and stone floors, is a vortex of drafts. A fire might roar in the central hearth, but 10 feet away, your breath would still cloud in the air. The cold is a physical presence, a giant invisible beast that lives in the castle. The servants would place basins of water in the bedchambers at night, only to find them frozen solid by morning, a thick pane of ice that had to be broken to wash. Here, we see the true purpose of the 4-poster bed. This was not originally a statement of style, it was a piece of architecture. It was a room within a room. At night, the lord and lady would climb into this wooden structure. Servants would then draw the thick, heavy curtains, often lined with fur or made of heavy velvet, on all 4 sides, creating a small enclosed tent. Their own body heat, trapped within the curtains, combined with a warming pan filled with hot coals from the fire and passed between the sheets, would be the only thing keeping them warm. But the greatest contrast to Thomas Fletcher's life is the food. The noble is not worried about a hunger gap. His winter is a fortress of feasting. His larder is a series of stone-walled rooms. It is stocked not just with salted and smoked meats from his own estate, but with barrels of wine from France, sacks of sugar from the Mediterranean, and, most importantly, spices from the distant fabled East. Pepper, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger. These spices are not just for flavor. They are the ultimate symbol of wealth and power, worth more than their weight in gold. They are also used to disguise the taste of preserved meat that, even in a castle, is months old. While Thomas Fletcher eats a monotonous pottage of barley and turnips, the lord dines on multi-course feasts. Roasted pheasant and swan, their feathers put back on for display. Venison pies, the deer poached from his own private forest. Fish from his ponds. And everything heavily, powerfully flavored with expensive imported spices. His hunger is not for calories, but for novelty and entertainment. And yet, the cold is the great equalizer. The Lord may be well fed, but he is still cold. The ice still forms in his water basin. He too huddles under finer furs. The winter, for all his wealth, is still the enemy. And for the soldiers on the ramparts, the watchmen pacing the stone battlements, life is a frozen misery, an hour-by-hour endurance test against the howling, icy wind. There is one other community in the medieval landscape, a third way of surviving the cold, the monastery. Here, survival is a matter of iron-willed discipline. Let us imagine a monk waking in the frozen darkness. There is no fire in his small stone cell. He sleeps on a simple straw pallet, his woolen robe his only blanket. He rises not to the sun, but to the sound of a bell, its cold iron clang cutting through the pre-dawn blackness. He is called to matins, the first prayer of the day. He and his brothers walk in silent procession. They walk through the open-air cloisters, the covered walkways that surround a central garden. The stone arches are open to the elements, and the wind whips snow onto the stone floor. Their woolen robes are their only barrier against the black, freezing air. They file into the vast, unheated stone church. Their voices rise in unison, chanting the Latin psalms. Their breath clouds in the candlelight, a visible collective prayer. They will stand here on the cold stone floor for hours. Their work, too, is a battle against the chill. Imagine the scriptorium, the room where manuscripts are copied. It is a room of silence and scholarship. It is also, by rule, almost always unheated, for fear of fire destroying the priceless books. The monks, sitting at their sloping desks, would write with quills cut from goose feathers. They would write until their hands were too numb, too stiff with cold, to hold the quill. The ink itself would freeze. They would make their own ink, from oak galls or carbon. In the deep winter, it would turn to slush in the inkwell. They would have to warm it over a small, contained brazier of coals, a rare and dangerous privilege. The vellum, the treated animal skin they wrote on, would grow stiff and uncooperative with the cold. This was a physical, painful, and slow-moving battle, a test of devotion. The monks' warmth came not from comfort, but from routine. Their simple, rationed meals, bread, vegetables, and fish, meat was often forbidden, were eaten in a cold, silent refectory. Their warmth came from their constant prayer, their shared sense of purpose. And perhaps it came from the calefactory, or warming room. This was often the only room in the entire monastery, aside from the kitchen and infirmary, that was permitted to have a fire. Here, monks could come in small groups for a few precious minutes at a time to thaw their stiff blue hands, to feel the life return to their fingers before returning to their cold, scholarly, and sacred work. This was a different kind of community survival, not driven by family, but by faith, and ruled by the bell, a disciplined, shared perseverance against the chaos of winter. Let us return to Thomas Fletcher's village. He is not a lord in a castle or a monk in a monastery. He is a farmer, and he cannot survive alone. The greatest weapon against the medieval winter is not the axe, or the salt, or even the fire. It is the community. On Sunday, the church bell rings out over the snow-covered fields. Its cold, iron sound cuts through the still air. Attendance is not really optional. Duty to God, social obligation, and the simple, desperate need to connect with other humans draw everyone from their smoky huts. The Fletchers put on their best clothes, which simply means their cleanest, least patched tunics, and walk the frozen, packed snow path to the village church. The stone church, like the manor, is freezing cold. There is no heating save for the candles on the altar and the body heat of the parishioners. The villagers' breath clouds in the air as they kneel on the cold stone floor or on a handful of straw. But the church is the one place where everyone gathers, the social and informational center of their isolated world. They listen to the priest, Father Stephen, chant the Latin Mass. Most of them do not understand the words, but the ritual is a comfort. It is a familiar, unchanging rhythm in a world of terrifying uncertainty. It is a connection to God and to generations past who stood in this same cold church. After the Mass ends, the real purpose of the gathering begins. The villagers do not rush home. They linger in the churchyard, huddling in small groups, reluctant to return to their isolated homes. This is the village's weekly status update, the medieval internet. The men gather in one group. Thomas approaches his neighbor, John Cooper. Any word from the manor about work? This is vital information. Nothing yet, John might reply, though they're saying the Lord will need men to clear fallen trees once the snow melts. A chance to earn a little coin, or better yet, a portion of food by doing day labor for the Lord could be a lifeline for a family whose stores are running low. The women gather in their own circles, exchanging different but equally vital information. "My youngest has a cough that won't quit," Alice Miller says, her face lined with worry. Emma Fletcher, her own daughter Agnes prone to coughs, might reply, "Try honey and ground pine needles steeped in hot water. It helped Agnes last winter." This is how medical knowledge is passed from woman to woman, from mother to daughter. This is the community checking on its members. They all know who is sick, who is running low on firewood, whose stores are dwindling. They might make a plan to go and check on an elderly neighbor like Widow Thatcher to make sure her fire is still lit and she has food. They know that if she were to fall ill and be unable to tend her fire, she would freeze. They help, not just from kindness, but from a deep understanding that next winter it could be their family needing help. How do you endure the darkness? The sun sets at 3:30 p.m., and it will not rise again for 16 hours. The dim, flickering rushlight, a reed soaked in animal fat, gives off a poor, smoky light, barely enough to see the face of the person next to you. You endure it together. On many nights, a family like the Fletchers might go to a neighbor's cottage or host others in their own. This is, again, a practical decision. By gathering together, several families can share the warmth of a single fire, conserving precious fuel. But it is also a deep psychological need. It is a way to fight the monotony, the confinement, and the fear. The small, smoky room becomes crowded and warm. The air is thick with the smell of wool, smoke, and humanity. The women bring their handwork, their mending or their spinning, because work never truly stops. The men might whittle or repair a tool, and in the warm, dim light, they tell stories. With no books for common people, no television, no internet, the spoken word is everything. This is the primary entertainment of the medieval winter. An old woman, like the Widow Thatcher, might be the village's keeper of tales. The children, their eyes wide in the firelight, huddle close and beg for a story. "Tell us about the fairy rings," Agnes might ask. And the widow smiles, her face a map of wrinkles in the flickering light. She settles in and begins her tale. "Well, now you all know the green circles that appear in the meadows in summer," she begins, her voice dropping into the familiar cadence of the storyteller. "They say those are where the fairies dance on Midsummer's Eve. But in winter," she says, her voice dropping to a whisper, "those same fairies go underground, and if you listen on the stillest nights when the wind is quiet, you can hear their music beneath the snow." The children's eyes widen, imagining the magical world hidden beneath the frozen dead landscape. The adults smile, not because they literally believe it, but because these stories give a name and a shape to the world. "But you must never follow that music," the widow continues, her voice suddenly sharp with warning. "For those who dance with the winter fairies, those who are lured away by the sweet sound, are never seen again in the world of men." These stories, mixing old pagan beliefs with new Christian morals, are a way of processing the dangers of the world. They are entertainment, but they are also warnings. Do not wander in the snow. Do not leave the safety of the village. The world outside is beautiful, but it is dangerous, and it is not for you. They are a shared culture, a thread that binds the long, dark, and frightening night together. Storytelling is not the only diversion. In another cottage, perhaps at the priest's more comfortable home, a different kind of gathering is happening. The priest, Father Stephen, is one of the few literate people in the village. He has a few precious books and, as the source text tells us, a chess set carved from wood. He has invited Thomas and his son William to play. The board is set on a small table near the hearth. The pieces are simple, worn smooth from years of handling. The rules they play by are slightly different from our modern game, but the concepts are the same. As they play, they are exercising the same skills needed for winter survival: strategy, foresight, and careful planning. It is a quiet, intense, intellectual escape from the monotony of the cold. For those who do not play chess, there are simpler, older games. Games like Nine Men's Morris, played on a board scratched into a piece of wood, with pebbles or beans as counters. Or Fox and Geese. There are dice games too, played in secret, often forbidden by the church as a form of gambling, but popular nonetheless. In the widow's cottage, after the fairy tales are done, someone might begin to sing. A work song from the harvest, its rhythm recalling the swing of a scythe. A sad, long ballad about a knight and a lady, or a simple hymn learned from church. The voices rise together, unaccompanied, the melodies simple and memorable, designed to be passed down through oral tradition. The music fills the small, smoky space, creating a warmth that goes beyond the physical heat of the fire. And then, perhaps once all winter, a true event happens. A traveling peddler arrives. This is a shock of novelty. In a world where roads are often impassable with mud and snow, a visitor is rare and exciting. The whole village gathers in the open area near the church. The peddler, his face weathered, spreads his wares on a piece of cloth in the snow. He has precious steel needles, colorful ribbons, simple jewelry, and perhaps a few small, precious bags of spices. Few have coin to spend in the dead of winter. But the peddler accepts barter. Emma might trade a few eggs or a small piece of cheese for a new needle, a tool more valuable than gold for mending their woolen clothes. But the peddler's true value is not his goods. It is his news. He is a human newspaper. He brings tales from the next village, from the town, from the world beyond their small valley. The river is frozen solid 10 miles north, he reports. Food is scarce in the town. You are better off here with your own stores. This information is vital. It allows the village to gauge their own situation, to know if their suffering is unique or universal. He also brings new songs and new stories, a fresh injection of culture that will be retold, analyzed, and treasured for weeks to come. The peddler's news of a frozen river reminds Thomas of a story. One evening, his daughter Agnes asks him to tell of the worst winter he knows. But his wife Emma, not wanting to frighten the children with tales of the great famine, interjects. "Better to tell of the winter your grandmother faced as a girl," she says. And Thomas nods, grateful. He settles by the fire, the children gathered at his feet, and begins to tell a story not of fear, but of wonder. He tells of the great frost of 1309, when the River Thames in London, a place they can barely imagine, froze so solid for so many weeks that the very nature of the city changed. This was a rare, magical, and surreal consequence of the Little Ice Age. The river, the city's great highway and barrier, became a road of solid ice. And a festival broke out, a spontaneous, chaotic, and joyful carnival. They called them Frost Fairs. Let us imagine it with them. Let us walk out onto the ice. The sound is different, a solid, dull crunch under your boots. The air is bitingly cold, but the mood is celebratory. Merchants, always opportunistic, have dragged wooden stalls and booths out onto the frozen surface. Fires are built right on the ice, the flames reflecting strangely on the frozen, milky surface. There are booths selling hot, spiced wine and roasted meats. There are games, races, musicians, and jugglers. People are sliding, shouting, and laughing. An enterprising blacksmith has set up a forge and is hammering away, the ring of his anvil echoing strangely over the frozen water. Thomas tells them how people rode horses from one bank to the other, a daredevil act that proved the river's strength. He describes a strange, temporary city, a world turned upside down, existing for just a few weeks outside the normal rules of life. What Thomas doesn't mention, or perhaps doesn't know, is that even this wonder had a dark side. Such extreme freezes brought extreme hardship to the poor. The river, a source of transport for food and fuel, was closed. Many died from the cold, or from hunger, or from accidents on the ice. But the story, as he tells it, is a rare bright spot in the grim reality of winter. It's a tale of human adaptability, of our irrepressible need to find joy and community in the most hostile and bizarre of circumstances. It's a reminder that winter is not just a time of grim endurance, but sometimes a time of strange and fleeting magic. It gives his children something to wonder at, a touch of romance for the very cold that holds them captive. Winter is also a time of structured, communal celebration. The bleak, dark monotony is broken by the feasts of the church. These are points of light in the darkness, days to aim for. The most important of these, after the midwinter Yule celebrations, is Epiphany on January 6th. This feast, which celebrates the visit of the Magi to the infant Jesus, is a necessary break, a chance for the entire community to release the tension that has been building since Martinmas. The day begins with a special Mass. The cold stone church is decorated with evergreen boughs, holly, ivy, and mistletoe, symbols of life persisting even in the dead of winter. The priest wears his best vestments. After the service, the village holds a modest, shared feast in the churchyard. This is not a feast of massive abundance, but a feast of community. Each family contributes what they can spare: a loaf of bread, perhaps one baked with precious wheat flour, a small piece of cheese, some preserved fruit or meat. By our standards, it is a humble meal. But in the context of winter scarcity, sharing food like this is an act of profound generosity and a symbol of collective abundance. The children might receive a special treat, a piece of honey cake, or a small sweet saved just for this day. The celebration includes the tradition of the Bean King. A special cake or loaf of bread is baked with a single dried bean hidden inside. The loaf is cut and distributed. Whoever finds the bean in their portion is crowned king for the day. This is a wonderful, playful reversal of the normal social order. For one day, 12-year-old Peter, the miller's son, might get the bean and find himself wearing a paper crown, king over the village elders. He gets to make playful, royal commands. This laughter, this suspension of the rigid social hierarchy, is a vital psychological release valve, letting off steam in a world of rigid rules and confinement. There are simple games, sack races in the packed snow, contests to see who can slide furthest on the frozen pond, blindfolded games where players try to hit a suspended pot with a stick. The prizes are nominal, perhaps an extra portion of the feast. But the real reward is the break from routine, the physical exertion, and the shared communal laughter. As darkness falls all too early, the celebration moves indoors to the larger homes, where candles are lit, a rare extravagance, and the music and socializing continue, a pocket of light and noise against the vast, cold, and silent winter night. The joy of Epiphany fades. The candles are extinguished. January gives way to February, bringing the deepest, most profound challenges of the medieval winter. In modern times, we think of February as the tail end of the season. For Thomas Fletcher, it marks the beginning of what many called the starving time, or the hunger gap. It is the great, cruel paradox of winter's end. The days are beginning to get noticeably longer, a faint promise of spring. But the food, the stored-up life of the autumn, is running out. Thomas wakes one morning before dawn, a heaviness in his chest that has nothing to do with the weather. He kindles the day's fire, and in the faint growing light, he does the mental calculation that he does every day. He assesses the grain chest. He counts the remaining smoked hams. He and Emma have a quiet, worried conference by the fire, their voices hushed. "The grain is low," he says. "We have perhaps 3 weeks of full rations." Emma nods, her face calm. This is not a surprise. This is the rhythm of medieval life. "Then we must stretch it," she replies. This is the moment all their preparation was for. The larder, once a symbol of abundance, is now looking bare and desolate. The last of the smoked hams have been eaten or are being saved for a true emergency. The root vegetables in the storage pit, sensing the coming spring and the change in the earth, are beginning to sprout, sending out pale, ghostly shoots. As they do, they turn woody, their starches converting to sugar, their nutritional value plummeting. The last wheel of cheese has a spot of mold that must be carefully cut away. Stretching the food is a grim, joyless business. It means the pottage gets thinner. More water, more dried peas, and less barley. The bread, already dense, is now made with less rye and more ground bean flour, or even ground acorns, making it heavier and harder to digest. Rationing becomes severe. Portions are reduced. Every meal is a careful calculation of calories. The family's energy levels drop. Hunger is no longer a distant threat. It is a constant, gnawing presence. This is the most dangerous time of year, when the body's defenses are at their lowest. The village pulls together, sharing what scraps are left. A family with a surplus of dried peas might trade for a bit of salted fish. A strong young man might chop wood for an elderly neighbor in exchange for a portion of their remaining preserves. This is the final, desperate test of endurance. All of them hoping that spring and the first new food will arrive before their strength gives out completely. Malnutrition weakens the immune system. The crowded, smoky, unventilated air of the cottage, shared with animals, is a perfect breeding ground for respiratory illness. One morning in late February, Thomas's youngest daughter, 6-year-old Agnes, wakes with a deep, rasping cough, her small face flushed with fever. Emma's heart sinks. This is what she has been dreading. Children and the elderly are the most vulnerable. Every winter, a cough like this turns into something worse, what we would call pneumonia or influenza, and claims a life in the village. There are no doctors for peasants, no antibiotics, no clinics. Emma must rely on the folk medicine passed down for generations, a mix of practical herbalism, tradition, and prayer. She begins her treatment immediately. She sends William out to cut fresh pine needles. She steeps these in hot water to create a sharp, fragrant tea. She doesn't know it contains a high dose of vitamin C, only that it is good for a cough. She takes a precious spoonful of honey, saved for just such an emergency, and mixes it with dried herbs, perhaps horehound or thyme, to soothe Agnes's raw throat. She keeps the child warm, piling every spare blanket and fur on her, and placing hot stones, warmed by the fire and wrapped in rags, at her feet. She encourages her to drink, to stay hydrated. Thomas, watching, his face creased with worry, asks if they should call for Father Stephen, the priest. He can offer prayers, and perhaps he knows a remedy from a book. But Emma, placing her hand on Agnes's small, hot chest, waits. The fever is not too high. The breathing is labored, but not yet rattling. Later, Thomas himself might go to the frozen riverbank and, with his knife, strip bark from a willow tree. He boils this bark into a bitter, dark tea. He doesn't know it contains salicin, the natural compound that aspirin is derived from. He only knows that it is a traditional remedy for fever and pain. This is the reality of medieval medicine, a combination of practical, plant-based wisdom that often worked and desperate, heartfelt prayer. For a week, the family waits, the sound of the small, pained cough filling the smoky hut. A gift from a neighbor, John Coper's wife, arrives, some dried elderberries and the last of their honey, with instructions to make a syrup. It is a profound comfort, a reminder that they are not in this alone. This communal support, this shared knowledge, is their only safety net. Agnes's fever breaks. She is weak, but she has survived. And as she begins to slowly recover, the world outside is also, finally, beginning to change. Hunger gap is at its absolute worst in this transition period of March and early April. The snow melts, but not in a gentle, spring-like way. It melts and refreezes, turning the village paths into a treacherous, ankle-deep morass of mud and ice. But the signs of life are unmistakable. The days are noticeably, wonderfully longer. The sun, when it appears, has a new warmth. The quality of the light itself has changed, from a thin, gray watercolor to something with strength. And then, one morning, William stops and listens. "Birds," he says. The first migratory birds have returned, their songs a thin but powerful promise of spring, cutting through the silence of winter. Snowdrops, the first brave flowers, push their delicate white heads through the last of the snow. The ice on the village pond groans, cracks, and breaks apart. The sound of dripping water, once a prelude to more ice, is now a sound of release. And then, the most important sign of all, the first green. This is not the green of crops. The ground is still too cold to plant. It is the green of weeds. Emma takes the girls out, not to the garden, but to the forest edge and along the warmer south-facing banks. They are foraging for the first wild plants. They gather young dandelion greens. They dig for the small, pungent bulbs of wild garlic. And, most importantly, they carefully pick the young, stinging leaves of the nettle. "Nettles make the best spring soup," Emma explains, as they carefully pick the stinging leaves with cloth-wrapped hands. They restore strength after winter weakness. This is not just food, this is medicine. These early plants are packed with the vitamins and minerals, especially vitamin C and iron, that the family's bodies have been starved of all winter. This is the true spring tonic that will cure the winter weakness, the lethargy, the sore gums, what we would call scurvy, and restore their strength. That night, the family eats a thin, bright green soup. It is the first fresh, green food they have tasted in many months. It is the taste of survival. A few weeks later, in late April, the soil is warm enough. The danger of a hard frost has, they pray, passed. Thomas and William take the newly repaired harrow and the ox and begin to break the soil. Emma and the children follow, planting the first precious peas and beans. The siege is over. On the evening after they have planted the first seeds, Thomas stands at the door of his small cottage. The air is cool, but it is no longer hostile. It carries the rich, damp smell of the newly turned earth, a smell of promise. "We made it," he says simply. There is no great celebration, no festival for the end of winter. There is only a quiet, profound, and exhausted satisfaction. They have survived another cycle. They have endured the cold, the darkness, and the hunger. Their ingenuity, their resilience, and their community bonds have carried them through once more. The shadow of winter is always present in their lives, even in the coming abundance of summer. Every choice they make in the sun will be with the next winter in mind. Which crops store best? How much firewood can be gathered? The battle is never truly won. It is only postponed. But for us, our journey is over. It is time to come back. Back to your own room, your own time. Back, slowly, to the present. Let us not come back abruptly, but in stages. First, come back to the silence. The medieval world was quiet. The loudest sound, the wind or the church bell. Acknowledge the sounds of your own world. The distant hum of traffic, the quiet whir of a fan, the sounds of a safe and powered world. Then come back to the light. Thomas's world was ruled by an oppressive 16-hour darkness, broken only by a smoky, flickering flame. Feel the absence of that darkness, the safety of your room, even when your eyes are closed. And finally, come back to the warmth, the reliable, effortless, and miraculous warmth that surrounds you. The story of Thomas Fletcher and his family is a reminder of the hard-won, practical knowledge that allowed our ancestors to survive. It is a story of resilience etched into the very rhythm of the seasons. But that struggle is not yours, not tonight. You are safe. You are warm. You are comfortable. You can let go of these thoughts. Let go of the cold, the smoke, and the darkness. There is nothing for you to do, nothing to prepare, nothing to fear. All that is left to do is to appreciate the simple, miraculous comfort of your bed, to feel the safety of your warmth, and to drift off into a deep, peaceful sleep. Good night.